There's a famous Zen koan that goes like this. A monk asks his Zen master, "What is the Buddha?" He replies, 3 pounds of flax. Well, if you ask me, the Buddha is 300 pounds of hand-straightened nails. This wasn't what I signed up for when I decided to study Zen. I expected mystical riddles with paradoxical answers, pouring effortlessly from some impassive Asian guy, sitting cross-legged on a raised dais, wearing flowing robes and radiating gentle compassion from his beaming brow. Instead, I got the smoldering intensity of a man of unswerving conviction, a no-nonsense, straight-talking West Virginia hillbilly who just happened to be a bona fide Zen master. A man who confronted my ego at every turn. So, rather than a warm and loving embrace, I got a bucket of bent nails. Back in 1972, I was a sophomore at the University of Pittsburgh. It was an exciting time to be a college student, and Pitt fairly hummed with the spiritual, political, and alternative lifestyles of the day. But when I took an honest look in the mirror, I saw only a frustrated young man, plagued by romantic delusions of grandeur, riddled by all the same doubts, insecurities, and hesitations that most young men face. Then I stumbled upon Zen Buddhism. Zen seemed like the perfect antidote to my nagging questions about the meaning of life. I was captivated by Zen's clean, pragmatic approach to spirituality, without dogmas and rituals. I was drawn to Zen's emphasis on self-exploration and validation through personal experience. So when a buddy told me about some guy giving a Zen lecture, I jumped at the chance to go. And that's where I came face to face with the hillbilly Zen master who would blow my mind and radically transform my life. As my friend and I slowly circled the block in downtown Pittsburgh, searching for the right address, I suddenly spied a short, stocky, middle-aged fellow in a felt hat chatting amiably with another guy. Somehow, I instantly knew this fedora-clad figure was the man I'd come to see. Captivated by forces beyond my control, I leapt from the still-moving car and headed straight for this mysterious character.
Is this where the Zen lecture's being held?
Yes, it is.
Tell me something. Do you think this Zen fellow can help you?
I sure as hell hope so.
The name's Rose.
Suddenly, I was staring into the most amazing set of clear, ice-blue eyes I've ever seen. It was like I'd tumbled into a hall of magic mirrors. These eyes simultaneously sucked me in by their warm invitation and pushed me away by the way they were looking straight through me, out the back of my head, and on into God knows what. I shivered, and a spark jumped between us, an electric jolt that stunned me and drained every thought from my head. All I could do was just stand there with one of those stupid smiles people get when being addressed in a language they don't understand. Richard Rose's lecture, like the man himself, was enigmatic. Instead of a calming meditation, Rose thundered that we're all doomed to die, and most of us are fated to just sleepwalk right through life along the way. But he also argued for a better way to live, a transformational path that provides the solution to Zen's riddle of life and death. A selfless solution Zen calls Satori, and Rose called enlightenment. But there was something else, a palpable energy in the room, an electricity that I swore I could see jumping between Rose and his deeply moved audience. I was hooked. I quickly became Rose's student and started making regular one-hour trips from Pittsburgh to Wheeling, West Virginia to hang out with him. But if I was hoping for a scripted routine or a series of daily practices to follow, I was sorely disappointed. Spiritually speaking, Rose put precious little effort into playing the guru. While he always seemed glad to see me and freely answered questions, visiting often meant just hanging around as he went through his normal routine. So much so that I sometimes went home wondering if he was testing my seriousness or just wasting my time. But as those jolts of mystical energy between us continued, I couldn't get them out of my mind. Something was happening, and I needed to find out what. When in the summer of '73, Rose announced a summer intensive at his farm, I instantly signed on. So did a dozen other spiritual seekers who were also willing to live out of sleeping bags, camp toilets, and a bag of brown rice for a few months. As usual with Rose, things quickly took an unexpected turn. The very first night, Rose simply drove off to the house in Wheeling he shared with his family and didn't return. We waited for days, meditating, reading, hiking, anything we could think of. Finally, we got so bored that we crammed into my day-glow green 1963 Ford hippie van and went to Rose's house to see if he was alive or dead. We'd played right into his hands. He set us to work tearing down an abandoned house for lumber in order to build a bunkhouse at the farm for future retreats. Everything, and I mean everything, was to be salvaged, including the nails. And since Frank was the only one in our group with some carpentry to his credit, he was put in charge. As usual, Rose was right. Idling for days dramatically illustrated why every monastic tradition emphasizes manual labor. We were eager for our first day, but when we arrived at the site, Frank told me privately,
Mr. Rose isn't going to let you go up on the roof.
Why?
Well, mostly because he thinks your head's in your ass. And you spend most of your time taunting and teasing the others. That's probably going to cause you to fall and break your neck. And then he's got to go to Pittsburgh and tell your mom. So.
There's got to be a mistake. I mean, Rose...
There's no mistake, Augie. Rose got you on nail straightening duty. Okay? Don't even think about going up on that roof. All right? Let's go to work.
how humiliating. I wasn't even allowed to pull nails from the lumber cascading from the roof. Instead, I was set to work straightening the bent ones. By the end of the day, my effort wouldn't have garnered 35 cents if the nails were new, and mine sported the square heads of the previous century and were half rusted away. When quitting time finally rolled around, I jumped into the van and made a beeline for Rose. Clearly, there just had to be a mistake. Rose met me at the door.
Mr. Rose, Frank said you didn't want me on the roof. I told him that mistake's some kind of mistake.
There's no mistake. Your head's so far up your ass, I'd need a team of mules to extract it. You're so busy amusing yourself at other people's expense that you'd fall and break your neck. Then I'll have to drive to Pittsburgh and tell your mother.
I was furious. But as usual, Rose knew his mark. I continued to seethe, but I was so determined to prove him wrong that I went back to straightening nails with a vengeance. My determination paid off. I was eventually given more valuable work, but I never did reach the roof that summer. I only metaphorically managed that many years later, when, with the benefit of hindsight, I was ready to admit that some of the most valuable work I ever did was banging away on those worthless nails.